Hey, what's happening? Welcome and welcome back to my channel. My name is D, and today we're going to be talking about dragons. So I just finished doing a two-part review series of Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros, which is a sequel to Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, obviously. And as many of you know, my channel basically got started because I did a review of Fourth Wing. I've been doing this for like 4 months or so now, and it's been mostly fun, and I've enjoyed getting to know some of y'all in the comment sections and getting to know some of y'all in the Discord server for the patrons. And I just want to say thank you so much for everyone who's been rocking with me from the start, or however long you've been rocking with me. Thank you for rocking with me at all, because a lot of people don't. But, I was thinking about it this week, and I thought it was kind of funny that, I guess my channel started because of a book that's about dragons and dragon riders, but I don't really care about dragons all that much. What I mean is dragons aren't necessarily a selling point for me when it comes to media. Like if I'm book shopping and I see a dragon on a cover of a book, I might pick it up and be like, oh, what is this about? But that's not a guaranteed buy for me. Same thing with like movie posters. Just because there's a dragon on it doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to go buy a ticket. I think that's due in part to the fact that, as I've mentioned many times on this channel, I'm not super into like epic high fantasy, that sort of medieval Eurocentric type of vibe, Lord of the Rings, Skyrim type things. Growing up, I didn't really engage with a lot of media that heavily featured dragons. Like, I guess dragons aren't necessarily that heavily featured in those series. And there's like one episode of Avatar: The Last Airbender that features dragons pretty heavily. And I love that episode, but it's not like they're not a huge part of the franchise is what I'm trying to say. I guess Mulan, because I love Mushu. I don't think I'd even like that movie if it weren't for Mushu. I guess I find it a little interesting because I feel like I sort of have an outsider's perspective when it comes to the fantasy novels that I've generally reviewed on this channel, because I feel like most of the time these books aren't for me. Like, they're not, like, I'm not part of the demographic these books are meant for. Something that I found kind of interesting in the comment section of the Iron Flame reviews was people saying that Fourth Wing was marketed like it was meant for people who were new to fantasy. I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that. I feel like if you were going to introduce somebody to fantasy, I'd go for something that's like low fantasy. Something that's like in our world, but there's a secret society of witches, or like it's about a girl who's part of a family of vampire hunters and that kind of a thing. I think that's a better introduction than to go straight into like, I don't know how to pronounce these names. I don't know where this is or what culture these fictional countries are kind of inspired by, that sort of thing. But I would feel bad for anybody who was like introduced to fantasy through this and then didn't like it as much as I didn't like it. Because I think that while Rebecca Yarros' books, I think the series is called The Empyrean. So while The Empyrean kind of has all of the dragon rider tropes that it needs to be a dragon rider story, it doesn't do a great job of it, and it would probably ruin dragons and dragon riding for somebody who's a newcomer to fantasy. I'm not saying the Fourth Wing can't be an introduction to fantasy for people, because literally any fantasy book can be an introduction to fantasy for somebody. They just have to have never read fantasy before, and then this book be their first one. And that'll probably affect how they view the whole fantasy genre from that point on. For me, Fourth Wing was my first dragon rider story. I never read Aragon or whatever that series is called. I knew of it, and I think I saw the movie at a friend's birthday party when I was a kid. And there's like a couple things I didn't say in my Fourth Wing or Iron Flame review that I kind of wish that I said. First one is a joke that is definitely not worth it, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's my channel and I do what I want. Iron Flame? More like I'm ashamed, am I right? See, told you, wasn't worth it. Oh man, I should probably cut that out of the video, but I don't know, maybe. I don't know. Something that I should have ended my Iron Flame review with that I didn't is that, like, while I would never promote Rebecca Yarros' works as in say, you should read this, because when I don't like telling people what they should or shouldn't do. And also, I don't rock with Yarros because, like, her stance on what's going on in Palestine And I wouldn't be shocked to find out that she also has some other ideologies, some views that are harmful to other marginalized communities, like the internalized ableism and toxic positivity that is just dripping off the pages of Fourth Wing and Iron Flame alone. There's probably other shit, like there's some like low-key biphobia. There's some other shit that I'm just like, I just get the feeling that this is not a person who I would rock with, and so I wouldn't promote her stuff. But at the same time, and also, I felt kind of bad for fans who were probably looking forward to this book, because I think between the publisher rushing the book, and so books showing up with like chapters in the wrong place and pages upside down and pages missing and maps printed wrong and the sprayed edge is not being fully sprayed, like that shows a lack of care. Like, we don't care about you having a high quality product, we just want to show money. But also it felt like Yaros either didn't take the time or wasn't given the time to really craft this story and maybe like build upon the foundation that she laid out with the first book, because there is like a dip in quality, which is saying something, because I didn't like Fourth Wing, right? And then another thing that came to mind right after I posted part 2 of my Iron Flame review is that I think that the series checks off a lot of boxes. Like, you've got a young woman who is smarter. She's like not like other girls, and she's smarter, and she's also the special, and there's dragons, and there's hot men who are muscular and strong, and it was just like it has all the things that are appealing, but it's wrapped up, like it's not packaged well. It's not, the edges are not smoothed out. They're all really rough. But for some people, as long as they have those things, it's good, right? Bringing it back to that pizza analogy, for some people, if it's got sauce and melted cheese on it, then it's good. Bringing it back to the point of this video, I guess I was almost like disillusioned with dragons, right? Like, which is like a weird sentence to say as an adult man into a microphone for a camera that he's going to put on the internet. But yeah, there was this part of me that started to wonder, like, oh, maybe dragon books just like aren't for me. Because I've read 5, 2 of which I loved, but dragons are not that heavily featured in it. One of which is just like, it's fine. And then the last 2 I really didn't like at all. And like, this is more thought than I've ever given to dragons in my entire life. But I was like, what? I wonder what the appeal for like other people are for dragons, you know? Because for me personally, like when it comes to the Eurocentric epic high fantasy type of dragon that kind of comes to mind, like it's got a specific sort of look and shape to it. It varies from artist to artist, but you know what I'm talking about. I just don't usually care. So like, I love the look and design of like Asian dragons. Like if I saw someone with like a tattoo sleeve of an Asian dragon, I'd think that was so sick. Or whenever I see them on like shirts or whatever, I think those are amazing designs. I love the look of them artistically. And again, like they're kind of in stories I grew up with as a kid. So I think they're kind of cool. But I don't know if I'm ever like, ooh, dragons, you know what I'm saying? So I posted in my community tab asking like, yo, why do y'all like dragons so much? I didn't say it that way, but that was I didn't quite say it that way, but I was just kind of curious. And that had a ton of responses, and a lot of people responded, and there were some like through lines. A lot of people were just talking about like how, you know, it's a giant fire-breathing lizard. How is that not cool? And I'm like, oh yeah, fair point. And like their size and power came up a lot. And I was like, okay, yeah, all right, makes sense. A lot of people talked about their intelligence, and so I guess they're kind of fans of the wise dragon trope. You know, again, kind of like the dragon has lived for so long, it knows all this shit, and you know, it has the answers or whatever. And I think that must be cool. There were a few comments that kind of led me to believe that people like the fantasy or the idea of being a dragon rider and having a bond with a dragon, and you can like fly around and maybe, I don't know, get into sword fights in the air or something, which, yeah, sounds pretty cool. And there were a fair number of writers who just talked about like the creative potential that a dragon kind of brings to a story, I guess you could say. A lot of people have like that context or that understanding of what a dragon is, but then you're able to play with it and say like, nah, in my world, they be like this. And that's like cool because it gives you something to work with that's familiar, but you can make it your own. I really like that with magic systems and power systems, which is why I usually talk about them when I review fantasy novels, is because I think that that's an area where a writer really gets a chance to shine. There were 2 comments that genuinely made me laugh when I read them. Because ain't nobody gonna be able to say nothing to me if I have a dragon. Skull emoji, fire emoji, Chinese dragon emoji. And yeah, I think that's funny if someone was like, yo, catch me outside, and outside there's a dragon. And another one was, because I'm the idiot that thinks I could just love it like a vicious scaled puppy. And it would take me forever to find this one specific TikTok, but it reminded me of this video of like a fucking bobcat in someone's backyard, and this lady's going like, ooh, kitty, here, kitty. And it's a fucking like a feral bobcat. Thank you to everybody who responded to that community post and shared your thoughts and opinions on why you love dragons and sharing that with me. It was really cool. You know, some people were really open and vulnerable in what these mythical creatures mean to you. And I really love that, you know, like I love that this channel can be a place where we can talk about things that we love and what brings us joy. For me, I can definitely see the appeal, like for sure, I can see the appeal. I think because dragons still kind of come with all this extra stuff that just isn't for me. I'm not like as hype about dragons. I really want, I don't even know. I'm not gonna talk about that. So yeah, I guess I was like intrigued by dragons. I couldn't say that I was like really hype about dragons because they come with all the high fantasy stuff that I'm not crazy about. But I was definitely intrigued. And so I read a bunch of dragon books recently, and I have some recommendations for y'all. You might have read these already, but I just want to talk about them. And before I get into those, I'm just gonna not remind you, but like, okay, I don't know what the word is. I already reviewed these books that I'm going to recommend, but I'm going to recommend them again because I still think that they're worth a read. So first up is Priory of the Orange Tree. Another book just fell off my lap. Don't worry about it. Priory of the Orange Tree. I think that this book is maybe too long. I think it could be a couple hundred pages shorter. I think I was pretty ambivalent towards this book in my review video, where I think I said it was like aggressively okay. And I think what I should have said is that the pacing really threw me off, and I feel like there's maybe too much in here, and it could either be shortened or turned into a duology. But I still think that if you're, brave enough, if you're strong enough, this is worth a read, and it's really nice. I think that it's got some really nice parts. It's definitely got its issues, and I think My Name is Marinez and a couple other people have pointed out those issues more thoroughly and articulately than I could right now. But yeah, it's definitely a fine book. It is. I think I said that it was like so aggressively okay, and I kind of stand by that. But it's pretty good. If you are part of the demographic that Fourth Wing was meant for, you're probably going to like this a lot more than I did. I've also already done a review on these 2 books, The Rage of Dragons and The Fires of Vengeance by Evan Winters, part of his ongoing series, The Burning series. These are Afrocentric high fantasy. This is like a fast-paced story of revenge. Dragons are not super heavily featured, but they are they're not in the story a lot, but they're very important to the story, if that makes sense. And I like the protagonist because he's kind of an idiot. He's kind of an asshole. He's not like perfect by any means, but he has like emotional vulnerability, and he does have like some emotional growth. And in the Fires of Vengeance, he ends up, this isn't much of a spoiler, but he ends up getting injured. So he has to deal with that injury, and it's a part of the plot. There's no... Like, he definitely pushes through the pain a lot, but he still feels the pain. There's no, like, magical compartmentalization. There's just him being kind of insane. I mentioned this in my review, but there is a lot of violence and there's a fair amount of misogyny in this world. And while I think that the text condemns that misogyny, it can still be a bit much for people, especially people like women and other marginalized genders. So, like, you know, so I just want to give that warning because I don't want to be like, oh, check it out, it's great. And then you read it and you're like traumatized or super offended or something like that. I want to talk about 3 other dragon books that I read. The first up on this list, Mo, you can stop asking me to read this now. To Shape a Dragon's Breath by Montequill Blackgoose. I really enjoyed this book. You know, if I had like a top 10 for the end of the year, this is definitely on that list. I love the way the author kind of writes dragons from this indigenous perspective and how dragons played a part in nature and spirituality, and contrasts that with how colonizers regard dragons and how they treat dragons. And it was just fascinating. This was kind of hard for me to read at times because there's so much, like, Anikus, the main character, deals with so much racism, microaggressions, and overt, like, aggression that reminded me of my time in Christian school. So that wasn't super fun. It was a little traumatizing or triggering at points. But I think the story is really beautiful. I love the character, Anikus. She's so smart, and she's so driven, and she's so strong. And she reminds me of some of my friends, and she reminds me of the kind of person I wish I was. I love the relationship he has with this cute little dragon that kind of looks like a cat. And the dragon never talks. Like, it's not that kind of dragon rider bond. But the dragon is still a really important, lovable character. And I don't know, like, you know, it took a while. There's not like epic battles. There's not like big fantasy war clashes or anything like that. But it is just really cool and sweet at times. And it's really important. This book is really important. That's what I'm trying to say. I couldn't call it a slow burn because it moves pretty quickly, but it doesn't have that epic fantasy climax and fall that you would expect for like a dragon riding story, but it's still really great. And it also, there's some elements that reminded me of Full Metal Alchemist, so that's fun. I don't know if that was intentional or if I'm just seeing things because I want to see things, but I thought it was fun. Another Dragon Rider book that I enjoyed recently was Fire with Fire by Destiny Soria. This is about 2 sisters who are descendants of a family of dragon hunters. This is sort of like a low fantasy story, so it's set in our world, but dragons exist, and so do sorcerers. I don't want to give too much away from the plot, but the sisters are biracial, and I thought that was cool. They're Mexican and Scottish, and so there's some talk about like cultural identity and connecting to it or feeling disconnected from it, and there's a lot of like 2 sides to the same story going on. There's a lot of, you know, dealing with insecurities and measuring up to family legacy and expectations, and that's all, I think, very relatable. And I think that this is a good like YA story that I think a lot of kids would resonate with these 2 characters. And the relationship between the dragon and one of the sisters is truly fascinating, and the dragon's really funny, not on purpose, but just kind of is. Like, I think they do that sort of like buddy cop. The dragon's the grumpy, older, wiser one, and the human is the more naive, inexperienced one. And I think they do that relationship really, really well. That's something that I said about Fourth Wing, and I think that Fire with Fire does it a little bit better. And the way dragons and sorcerers and magic works in this world is really well thought out and really cool. And it's not something that I really would have ever thought of. Like, it's creative in the sense that like it's all there, but it's twisted in such a way that I hadn't seen or heard of before. And I thought it was sick. And the last book that I read recently that I'm going to recommend is When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. This book really surprised me. I remember getting like, I don't know, maybe like 10, 20% of the way through the book and talking to the Don't Fret Club members in the Discord and saying, yo, this is like some white feminism ass bullshit or something like that. And as the story progresses, it gets less like that. You know, like the book originally starts in the 50s and moves forward, but even it's like we're following this one character's life, and as she grows up and her perspective broadens, so does the world around her, and so do all the possibilities. There's some talk and discussions near the end of the book that kind of remind me of when some of my friends came out as trans. And I don't know, like this was not, I had no idea what to expect. I just, you know, got this one off of Libby and hit play and then, you know, kept listening. And it was so, I was like, okay, I was bored for a while. And I was like, okay, whatever. And then I ended up falling in love with this character and feeling so bad for her and her sister and being so confused as to what the fuck was going on with women turning into dragons randomly and stuff like that. And then by the end of it, I was really moved. And I think I got kind of emotional at the end of when women were dragons. And I thought it was really cool. Not at all what I was expecting. And I don't want to say too much about the plot because that's part of the fun. But, you know, it had that sort of like so much happened and nothing happened at all thing about it, but in a really good way. So yeah, after reading those 3 books, I think I'm more excited about dragon stories. I still don't think that a dragon on the cover or there's a dragon in it would be enough to sell me on a book, but I think it would pique my curiosity more because all 5 books that I just recommended or talked about have different interpretations and understandings of what dragons are, what they could be, what the relationship between humans and dragons is, and it's just really fascinating to see all these different ways that people can take dragons. And so if if Fourth Wing was your introduction to dragons or fantasy, I highly recommend checking out some other stuff and seeing different ways of, you know, looking at dragons or different ways of interpreting dragons. I only talked about 5 books. There's a bunch more. So let me know in the comments, what's your favorite dragon book and why? I think that's pretty much it for me. I'm sorry if this video's been like a little chaotic. It's been a particularly tough week this week. But thank you so much for watching this video, especially if you made it to the end. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you're new to my channel, please subscribe. If you want to support the channel, support what I'm trying to do here, you can buy me a coffee /tip me. Link will be in the description below. And if you want to support the channel on a more regular basis and gain access to exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, make sure you consider subscribing to my Patreon. There you'll get a monthly rant review per month and a monthly reaction. Right now I'm watching the Shadow and Bone show. It's not called the Shadow and Bone show. It's just called Shadow and Bone. I'm watching Shadow and Bone and I'm reacting to it once a month. That's what I'm trying to say. Oh my goodness, I am so tired. You'll also gain access to, and this is my favorite part, the Don't Fret Club Discord server. We're talking about books, movies, music. We made a playlist together. We're talking about anime. Some people are talking about D&D. People are sharing their art and talking about their creative writing projects. It's a really good time. We would love to have you as part of the community. So if any of that sounds interesting and exciting to you, make sure you consider subscribing to my Patreon. Link will be in the description below. Patreon's not really your thing and you still want more content from me, make sure you consider subscribing to my second channel, Don't Fret 64. There I'm talking about anime and manga, so I'm reacting to Haikyuu, and I'm going to start reviewing manga probably this week. But however you choose to support me, I deeply appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching this video. Again, my name is D. Don't fret. I'll see you next time. Peace out.